Hello and welcome to The Person of the Therapist. I'm Dee Preston Dillon. The purpose of this series is to help us all get an understanding of the human being. What is it that happened developmentally and in special moments for therapists, for supervisors, for clinic directors? How do we come to this incredibly powerful healing domain that also is problematic? I am delighted to welcome my guest today, Hetty Barnett. Now, Hetty, you direct clinics. I'm familiar that you do supervision, that you have a private practice, that you've been a clinician for decades. But I wonder, how would you introduce yourself in terms of your theoretical leaning and something about your practice that you highly value?
Okay. Hi, Dee. It's great to be with you. Um, it's funny, what just popped in my head is, well, I don't really want to introduce myself in my theoretical leanings, which I will, but the first thing I want to say is that I'm an open water swimmer. I love to splash around in the waves and the water.
Oh,
There's a part of me that wants to express that first, like
yes. Wow.
that, because that
Yes.
is such a holding space for me. It has become an incredible holding space. And I'm learning that when I'm in the water, it supports everything I do, both as a person, as a mother, as a spouse, as a friend, as a family member, and as a professional. And as a professional, then my identity is as a craftsperson. I really love the craft of therapy. That feels very good to me. And as a clinical social worker, that's my technical training and my modality that has become a foundation for me and a language for me is internal family systems, IFS.
Mhm.
While, in graduate school at University of Chicago, there was psychodynamic and systems and
Mhm.
that good stuff. But my professional home as a modality is internal family systems
Mhm.
for adults and couples,
And
intimacy.
you and children or
I don't work with children
youth?
directly. I just never got that training. My path just didn't go that way. Um,
Mostly couples and adults then.
yeah,
Yeah.
couples and adults. Yep, my squash blossom necklace got messed up. Um, as a symbol, right? That's a good
Yes.
symbol.
Yes. Grounding, very grounding.
Very grounding. Yeah. Yeah. So, and then the second part you asked about what's something unique or something like that, or
Yes, it's what is it that you cherish so much that is an essential piece that you bring as a clinician, as a supervisor?
Mm, mm. What I've been stepping into that I really do cherish. It's also as a clinician and supervisor, and also as a crafter, a maker, builder of a community called Four
Mm.
Corners Counseling and Wellbeing. That's really, I'm stepping into that creative space as a leader, as a crafter of that community, a co-crafter. And one of the energies that really resonates for me is what I'm going to call my pastoral energy. So when I was, determining my vocation, I strongly considered becoming an ordained minister. And I come from a line of clerics on both sides, teachers and pastors. And so I certainly was going to be in the helping profession. And as I continue to hold space for people, just as space is held for me, and I continue to craft and build and co-create this community of clinicians and with the shared language and foundation of IFS,
Mhm.
that and in the times that we find ourselves in here in 2025, my pastoral energy feels really important in terms of being able to witness with people, holding space, um, being with the difficult things, both with clients and with clinicians,
Yes.
and seeing people as whole people. And it's so important to me that clinicians feel that they can be whole people in their whole selves with other clinicians, that we don't have to show up and be
Mm.
all, you know, tidy up and that we know things and we're only working from our head. You know, we get to be real, we get to be messy, and we need to be with one another so that we can grow and get to know ourselves better and do our own healing
Mm.
and expansion. So then we can really be that available support, right? And holding space for clients to do their healing and expansion and growth.
Very organic, very grounded, spiritual sensibilities in a grounded sense.
Yeah, right.
And I really hear an welcoming, open-hearted respect
Yeah.
for the peoples who come, that you hold, that you take on the role of heightened presence witness. Uh,
Yeah.
and it's very humanistic. I mean, I do hear systems in
Yeah.
there, not only ISF, but also that the largest perspective of that it's so inclusive,
Yeah.
that you resonate with the symbolic. Very
Oh,
much.
absolutely, I do.
Yeah,
Absolutely, I
yeah,
do. Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Archetypal, but not limited to that idea of an archetype, but maybe even more expansive, again, more organic.
Yeah.
Yes.
I would say that's absolutely true. And while I haven't been trained explicitly in humanistic psychology,
Mhm.
you know, it definitely has flowed through. And yeah, the eschatological questions, you know, of like, why are we here and who do we belong
Yes.
to and what is
Yes.
the purpose, you know, that feels deeply important to me.
Meaning and identity and
Yeah.
connection, it seems, are essential threads for you.
Yeah. And you know, one of the things I love to do is to be with a client who comes in with an issue, right? Like they're coming in because they're experiencing anxiety or they're coming in because they're having relationship problems, and you meet them where they're at
Yeah.
and help them get to know themselves better. And over the course of therapy, if the client is willing and we can meet there, it becomes about deeper meaning. It becomes about identity. It becomes about what have I understood about myself and the world, not even realizing it, and which of those beliefs and meaning making narratives in my head and my heart and mind are helping me, which of them have been holding me back and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah.
How can we heal them? How can we relate to them so that there's flexibility, there's choice in life? That's fun. If a client doesn't come in and say, I want to work on meaning making, I want to work on, you know,
Yeah.
they're coming in with something concrete and
Yeah.
practical. And
For
I
sure.
love that. And we meet
Yes.
that, and then it becomes expansive over time.
Hetty, what's the bridge in the moment during therapy, moving from that first, just as you described, validating where they are in the
Yeah,
moment and the problem as they see it and
yeah,
experience it, and then
right.
building that thread of trust to for transformation? What is the bridge? How would you
Mm.
describe that?
Well, it's about that thread of trust. I think the bridge is creating a safe shared space and a sacred shared space. So the bridge becomes, oh, this is a place where I can be my whole self. This is a place where I can be met. And as one of my mentors says, I can be seen and heard and understood, you know? And then the client's understanding of themselves becomes bigger and deeper. Yeah, that's what I would say.
I can imagine echoing voices from our viewers like, okay, that sounds good, but how do you do that? So,
Yeah,
how would you
right.
describe that? Very organic because it's
Okay.
not a recipe. But
No, right.
how would you describe what you do and or how you are in
Yeah,
presence to facilitate that beautiful ideal?
it is a balance of do and be, isn't it?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And so it's not imposing an agenda
Right.
while holding space for something bigger and deeper. It's validating, I mean, very practical things we learn in social work school and graduate school about unconditional positive regard, right?
Yes.
Understanding the person and the environment, other social work tenets, you know, like the self-efficacy and the agency of the client, right? What are their systems? So it's you're bringing curiosity,
Yeah.
right? And you become sort of like an investigative reporter about a client. You bring that beginner's mind when you can, because it's hard to do. But we got to remember to be curious, be open, and invite the client into that curiosity where before they didn't have curiosity. I just thought that's just the way life was, or I just thought that's how I was going to feel all the time, or I just thought that's the only way I could be in a relationship. So you bring and this happens, over weeks, over months. It's not necessarily at 6 sessions, right? And that can be fun too, because the shorter term therapy, although that's not my style, can be very creative too, about let's just use the time we have. It's like the container of the sand too. It's like a lot can happen in a small space.
And to help people cope.
Oh, of course, because this is not about, oh, we're not really stressed out here. We're not going to worry about like you being concerned about waking up in the middle of the night because you're so stressed out. We are going to address practical things. That's one thing I was thinking about in preparing to talk with you, was what led me to social work and to therapy, because I really considered ministry, and I considered getting a doctoral degree and becoming an educator, academic. And I wanted to meet people in practical ways. It just feels so gratifying to help people feel better over time, and
Yes.
yeah. And it's in the ways that they want to, not in ways that I assume they should.
The DNA thread, then, I hear the pastoral sense of compassion and the collective social justice, as well as your very organic being in the here and now, very mindful, I don't want to, in a Buddhist sensibility, and on in large scale of presence, but also a through line of creativity and inventiveness.
Yeah.
That be in the here and now, be in the moment, and then respond.
Yes. Right now, there's a group I've been together. It's a blessing in my life. That's not a word I use very much, but it actually feels real right now. It's called Spirituality and Clinical Practice. And there's 7 of us, and we've been together for 15 years.
Wow.
We read different books. And right now we're reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. When I read it for the first time 20 years ago, I did not understand it. It was just like another language. And coming around after 20 years of life experience and clinical experience, and there was something you just said that struck me about to make that connection about being present in the now, and being open to accepting the radical acceptance of what's happening in life, and also the acceptance of what's happening inside of us with deep compassion, and not minimizing that.
Oh. And not dismissing it, right? Not minimizing, and working really hard to become aware of what's going on inside of us.
That's right.
Not to stay up here, but to really do our own work. That's really important to you.
It is. And I would say, again, to be practical, so I'm teaching people mindfulness skills. I'm teaching people somatic awareness. So I'm saying, when you tell me about that, what do you notice in your body? So when you're feeling that way, does it remind you of anything else that you felt before? So these coming back to one's curiosity to oneself in very mind, body, spirit ways, and things that are not, they're simple, but not easy.
Yeah.
So it's not complicated. It's about becoming more mindful, coming into the present, noticing the body, noticing our reactions, noticing our self-talk and the internal narrative. Not complicated concepts, and challenging when we have been so focused on, living from a place of fear, just not questioning our internal narrative, not paying attention to our body, reacting rather than responding. That's how so many of us live, until we start to be curious about, oh, is this serving me? Would I want to respond to life, respond to myself in another way?
Yes. You are bringing the spiritual, the creative, the organic, and the mind, body, imagination. It seems to flourish with you as you are doing the 3 things: the pastoral, the teaching, and the clinical practical, grounded work. It seems that
Yeah. Yeah.
that you've brought all three of
Yeah.
those ideals.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but as I hear you speak, something that waltzed through my brain was that ego can go have a cup of coffee because, right? You humility is something that you embrace and that you demonstrate with in terms of work with your clients and work with your supervisees, and your own humility, and that it seems to me is not only very grounding but nourishing the healing, the very essence of the healing component
Mhm.
that allows you the you that has these qualities to be.
That's nice. I think on a good day, when I gave that big sigh about ego, it's because that is such a challenge to, we all have our own desires and fears. We all have our
Yeah,
agendas. We all have our yearnings, and so
yeah,
it's it's not like I'm not acting from ego. I'm always acting from these different parts of me. The best case is to be aware of that and to
yes.
have that observing space as well, you
Mhm.
know. Yeah, and humility comes from that, uh, as best as it can, and
Yes,
flowing
yes.
through, not something that I lead with, I don't think.
Right.
Yeah.
Um, you you mentioned going back to developmental
Yeah.
moments that may
Yeah.
have been touchstones for you to be this person that you
Yeah.
are. So, what is there about your life
Mm.
that that came up for you as I asked you if you would be willing to do this interview and to reflect on maybe childhood, adolescence, and developmental moments throughout your lifespan so far, anyway, that that you feel strongly about that have shaped you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And you
Mm-hmm.
did mention your the teachers and the pastoral
Yeah.
presence,
Yeah.
um, it, from family.
Yeah. 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 Well, what's coming up for me as you ask about developmental
Mhm.
is to think about some of my different parts, that I have gotten to know over the years that are younger, parts that hold some exile energy for me, in terms of have had some burdens, have had some pain, and then
Yes.
has also felt the more connected those parts feel to me and my core self, my presence, the more exciting it is. So when I first spoke about being an open water swimmer,
Mhm.
so I have a memory. This doesn't quite feel directly related to therapy, but it's a memory and an energy that I cherish. So I remember being, I don't know, 4 years old, swimming in the bathtub. Like I could take one little stroke, Maybe I was 3, I don't know. And I remember being sad when I got too long and I couldn't take a stroke.
Oh,
And so when I go in the pool, like last night, I was swimming and I invite at the very end of my workout, I float with a swim buoy and I just float on my back and I invite my 6-year-old to be with me. And my 6-year-old went through some stuff. Like that was the time that my parents divorced when I was 2. So I have a 2-year-old part that doesn't, she's pre-verbal. She had some real terror about just feeling alone that I've connected with. And my 6-year-old was very intrepid. She is very intrepid. Her name is Moxie, that part of me.
and just
And
to be clear for some viewers, you're referring to your 6-year-old self.
yeah, well, a part of me. I mean, she's a part
Yes,
inside of
just
myself, right? She's,
yes,
she's
yes,
my inner child, right? Some
yes,
people would
as
say.
opposed to a biological child.
Right, right,
Right, right.
right, right, right. That's right. That's right. Yes. So when I was 6, this energy and part of me.
Yes, yes.
Yes. And so that part has held some, there was a lot of changes in my life at that time. And my father, who I was living with, and I had a lot of his attention and love and care, he remarried. And then my mother, who I would visit in the summertime and yearned for her very much. And she remarried. And so the psyche of that 6-year-old of connection, I like to joke that I invented Zoom. That's what I think because I was like around 6 or 7, and I remember thinking, what if I could talk to mommy on the phone and also see her face? That would be the most amazing thing.
Wow.
So
Wow.
I've
You
worked with
did.
my 6-year-old part. Yeah, yeah. I think the Jetsons did too, but that cartoon.
Yes.
But so now there's a lot of freedom that my 6-year-old gets to just be a kid and swim around in the pool in this big bathtub because I see her, I continue to see her, I continue to be a witness to that story inside of myself in a way that has changed my identity. So I used to say, like, if anybody was to say, tell me about yourself, like one of the first things I would say is, oh, my parents divorced when I was 2. And it went from there. And now that's not the first thing I say about myself because it's found its place in the file cabinet of my memories in an appropriate place. It's not front and center, even though it's a deep part of my experience.
Mhm.
So that working with my own young parts, and there's other parts too, like my emerging adult part, who thought that she was ready for the world and was kind of taken for a loop about, oh my gosh, it's kind of overwhelming and intimidating out here. um, Working with those parts, loving them, getting to know what they went through. And this is happening in my own therapy and my own reflection and my own journaling, that kind of thing, in safe spaces, in the sand, you know,
Yeah.
and the integration happens over time. And so I tell clients, we're not going to dwell on the past. I totally trust that the information we need will arise over time. And it does. And then help through that lived experience. I really think clients need to have a lived experience
Yeah.
of what has our wounding been and how does the healing happen? How do we feel connected to ourselves and the world and something transcendent perhaps too?
Yeah.
It's not a perhaps for me, it's a definite, but I don't want to impose that on folks.
Right.
And through that journey, that healing and growth journey, then we can offer that to other people, the ripple outside. So that's very valuable. Yeah.
Were
So
there
that,
qualities that you, or things that you did as a child, or qualities that you began to develop that you now really see as present during your work with clients and supervisees?
hmm. Well, I do think that quality of staying connected to people. I one of my primary relationships, my mother was apart from me from age 2, and I needed. The word is needed, not just wanted, to feel connected to her. So I found a way to stay connected emotionally to her across time. And so like when the pandemic came and we had to do telehealth, and everyone was scrambling to get used to it, a part of me was like, I can do this. I've been doing this my whole life, being connected emotionally across time and space with a beloved person, with a special person. So I think I bring that quality for sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then I'm going to say playfulness in a certain way. I am not like a big joker. I think I can lean into being serious.
Mhm.
However, the creativity and playfulness that I enjoy is language with people and conversation, like creative conversation. I think it's just very fun to get to
Yeah.
know. I think that comes from my father. He's a very curious person.
Mm.
Just loves talking to people and getting to know them. I think I bring that too.
Okay. Yeah. And so it's that it goes to the bridge of connection to build the trust and build a sense of we're people. We're just people here talking about
Yeah,
serious things, not a pretense of taking on a model, a recipe, or a language of some kind.
I agree. That's a good way to put it.
I wonder if you have a couple of examples of what you've learned from clients,
Mm. Oh, of course.
incidences that might have come up that brought a new insight about therapy, about working with people, or about yourself. It could be any of those. So what happens? But of course, keeping confidentiality.
Right.
What comes up for you in terms of recalling incidences where those were turning points for you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, turning points. I was thinking about this last night, and what arose was when I was a very young social worker. I was still getting my hours towards my independent license. My first job after graduate school was to come to Northern Virginia Family Service in the Survivors Fund Project, working with families and survivors of the 9/11 attack on the Pentagon.
Mhm.
It was a really cool job, and painful. And my training as a chaplain, so as part of my training so I have a master's in theology and a master's in social work.
Uh-huh.
And I did clinical pastoral education, where you go into a hospital and you learn how to be with people during moments of pain, grief, the loss of loved ones,
Yeah.
significant turning points, speaking of, in people's lives. And you cannot fix it.
Right.
You're
No.
not there to fix it. You're there to be present with people.
Yes.
It was really a gratifying thing to experience that, to learn how to embody that.
And
Embody
it
that.
brought depth, more, maybe more depth than you had, more grief in that way of terror and
Yeah,
fear than you had any experience with prior to
yeah,
that.
that's true. That's true. And so working with survivors and families of the 9/11 Pentagon attack was was that grief work, because we couldn't really fix it. You know, their loved one had been lost, or they had experienced something very traumatic, right? Or both, usually. And so being with people, meeting them where they're at. And I remember one person who lost their spouse, and therefore she was a single parent, and it had been a difficult relationship. So the grief was
Oh.
complicated,
Mhm.
really complicated grief.
Mhm.
And I remember this person being, I don't even remember what the conversation was, but I was meeting with her at my office, and she was upset about something, very stressed out. And she said, "You can't help me at all," and just left the place. And I felt this panic. I mean, I'd literally been like a year from graduation, right? I'm like in my late 20s. What do I do now? What do I do now? And my impulse was to follow her out to the parking lot and to say to her, "You're right. This is a terrible situation. I cannot fix this. I probably cannot help you. And I'm here. I'm not leaving." And it was that, yeah, eventually I did need to leave the job. And at that point, she was doing much better. But it was that humanistic, that human connection, that you are going through pain and you don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah.
That felt very significant to me. I'll
Very
never,
powerful.
yeah, yeah,
And trusting, it seems that a nugget there is trusting yourself enough not to let the committee and the head chat what you should do or shouldn't, but to
right.
allow yourself to go right out there into the parking lot and be so totally one-on-one. I'm here
Yeah,
for you, not for
yeah,
me. It was
yes.
had to be an incredibly powerful moment for both of you.
My heart was racing. I remember I was scared to death. She was a pretty intimidating presence. You know, she's a powerful, powerful person.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know what I was doing really. And I think that was helpful too, to just be myself in my messiness, like unprocessed early professional space,
Yeah.
to meet her, literally to meet her where she was, you know, in the middle of that uncertainty in that parking lot, you know.
A thread that I want to underscore there is it doesn't matter your age or the number of licenses and the number of degrees or the number of recognitions that one has, that very much in the depth of grief, trauma, and loss, it is the human being that shows up. It is the heart, it's a full heartedness of all that other stuff matters in terms of brackets for the profession.
Mm-hmm.
But I
Mm-hmm.
think your illustration is very much of I don't know your grief. I haven't walked in your moccasins, but I will do what I can to be here.
Yeah.
I just wish so much more of that were taught in our graduate programs.
Yeah.
I don't want to switch to asking you quite yet what you would like to see changed in clinician development, but was there another example or was
Yeah, there's another example. Yeah, yeah. I have a long-term client who I've worked with for actually over a decade, and it's my most severely traumatized person with childhood trauma. And there's something very profound connection that I feel, parts of me feel a resonance with this person. And it was also, there was a naivete when I took on this client of I didn't know what I was getting into. And it's been a challenge through the years to help to continue to meet her where she's at and stay calm in the presence of her distress. This is someone who struggles with, distress tolerance, if you want to use the technical terms, emotion regulation,
Yeah.
mood management, and as I have grown, this is interesting, as a parent, I have grown in ways that have helped me show up for this client. And that's that developmental piece too. I really feel strongly that we all, of course, right? We all were kids first.
Yeah.
So when we all have gone through these developmental periods, and so we have little kids inside of us, or at least unfinished developmental tasks, right?
Yes. Yes.
And each of us has our own unique collection of those, right? And so we as clinicians have our unfinished developmental tasks, and then our clients have the same, and we're meeting in this like soup. It's just amazing,
Yeah.
And talk about humility, the humbling of when my own unfinished tasks coming up, and it's so important to be aware of what's happening for ourselves, So as I've grown and I've done so much consultation and gotten a lot of support on how to be present with this and all my clients, but with this particular client as a case study for me over the years to really get support and guidance. And so last week, this person had a huge win at work and had taken a leadership role, built relationships, and very successful that is going to impact hundreds of people.
Wow.
And we were talking about it, and I was, weaving in some reflective things, and talking about her growth and her emotional intelligence and how she was able to attune to people and really help people feel heard and really have them buy in to her leadership. It's just amazing. And then she says, and you have something, how about she put it? I have you to thank for part of this, is something how she said, And it was just incredible to have this person who's been in so much pain for so many years that she really couldn't even see me, that we have this partnership that is a mutual, there's that mutuality of being seen on both sides. Now she's not, I don't need her to meet any of my needs. That's how I take care of those needs elsewhere. And I am a human being. And in that dynamic of, our work together has helped her to be acknowledged as a really powerful thing,
Very powerful.
And I've needed to grow. I have grown so much over the years in working with that person. Yeah.
That's the profound connection at
Yeah.
that human level. And again, your mind, body presence, a true mind, because your body had to be picking up for so long
Yes.
visceral experiences she was going through. And then for you to monitor that, to validate her, to maintain and to open the portals for fluidity between you. Therapy it's so organic. It's and I think you just described truly very, very clearly for us the dance that must happen to support the other in a mindful presence, and then let that develop and evolve over years.
Yes, yes. Certainly for someone with complex trauma and PTSD over years. Slow is fast. That's one of the things that I've also learned over time. Slow is fast. These are long-term relationships in the context of the therapeutic space. Yeah. They're intimate relationships in a safe way,
Yes.
in a boundaried way. And it's very deep. They're attachment relationships.
Probably for many people more intimate than any family member. could
Yes.
be.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you know, mind, body, spirit, and relationship. So the name of my business is Four Corners Counseling, and you see it.
Oh, I
And here's my
see.
little logo with the flower, which is a symbol, which is a ring that was my mother's ring.
Oh, look at that. Oh,
I drew the symbol. This was like 15 years ago. I drew the symbol the first time and then realized I had drawn my ring. And the four corners is mind, body, spirit, and relationships. It's got to have the relationship in there. Yeah.
yes.
With
Yes.
ourselves and with other people. Yeah.
Yes.
Hmm.
So bringing your ring that was it your mother's?
Yes.
Yeah. And then connecting that to what you hold as your practice. And I just want to link back to how that client mentioned to you the way she's able to step in with courage and with presence and
Yeah.
dignity to make big changes in the world, that
Yeah.
what you did rippled is continuing to ripple out. And therapists don't always get that feedback, and in that moment
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
was so validating for
It
you
was,
and for her.
yes. I want to say it felt like an act of generosity on her part because she didn't
Yes.
have to do that.
Uh-huh.
She did
Right.
not have to do that. And it was this generous, like welcoming
Mhm.
in a certain way to me
Telling
of
the truth is a
her
part
own.
of that, though, not
Yeah.
ignoring the interconnectedness and the hard work
Yes.
of your collaboration.
Yes. Yes.
So there's some truthfulness that she stepped into in the
Yeah.
world and connected that truthfulness to her work with you.
Yes. Yeah. And that's an example of someone who would not have described, oh, I want to come into therapy to get to know myself on a deeper level and to understand how I'm relating to people in these deep ways. You know, this was more about I'm coming into therapy because I need help managing my, reactivity and my,
Yeah, yeah,
distress,
yeah,
practical things,
yeah.
And so, and the fact that there's this acknowledgement of a transformative space that has felt safe for her
Yes.
over time, that she can then go out into the world and yeah, it's
You,
just
you just described with that example the bridge
yeah,
that we
yes,
mentioned in the beginning that you were describing as that, really grounded. Let's take care of the problem solving, and then how that just evolves
yes,
into transformative spaces. That's a beautiful example. But I want to now go back, circling around here to your cup, which looked like a planter. So
oh, yes, isn't this the cutest?
that
So
is.
yes, I have a colleague friend at George Mason University School of Social Work, and they gave me a mug that says something about growing over time and changing the world or something like that.
Yeah.
And I just loved it so much that I copied it.
Oh, it's
We
lovely.
got our own mugs, yeah.
So let's move into symbols for the moment. I feel, Hetty, that we could go on for an hour and a half, but I want
Oh
to
my
be
gosh,
mindful
yes.
of your time so we can have another date uh,
Okay.
to dig into your work. You touched on the ring and the cup that you now drink from.
Mhm.
Wow, those two alone, so filled with metaphors of nourishment and visibility and
Yeah.
acting in the world and connection and so much there. But I also know that you brought some other symbols. Well, of all the symbols that you brought, what would you like to present? Share it right in your camera and tell us what that symbol represents for you. And
Okay.
then let's get an understanding of what that might mean in your practice,
Okay.
the person of the therapist.
All right.
Mhm.
So I feel so safe with you. I'm gonna choose a symbol that actually is connected to the ring and speaks to uh a place of pain and of transformation in my life. So if I get a little tearful, I'm gonna
Please, we honor. Yeah, we honor
yeah,
the authenticity.
that's right.
Yeah.
So this was given to me by my dear friend
Mm-hmm.
Simona Mernick, who you know also. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a spiral on this little container.
Yeah.
Inside is a handmade felt heart.
Oh, could you move
I'll
it
pick
up
it up.
just a little
Yeah.
higher?
Yeah,
There we go.
yeah.
I see. I see.
So,
It's
and
all felt with
that's all felt. So it's here's
painting. Uh-huh.
yes, it's a heart within a heart, and then a spiral in the middle, and you've got a spiral behind you,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah. There it is.
container has spirals in it.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh. Yeah.
yeah. And it's yeah, felted. Somebody made it by hand for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So the significance of this, and it goes again to the bridge between the deep healing work of the therapist
Yeah.
and how that creates space for deep healing work for clients. So, and this is where I might get teary. So during the pandemic, um, my daughter was in middle school, and it was just so challenging. And my mother, whom, as I mentioned, I didn't live with from the age of 2, and she and I always stayed connected. But my young adult part, who needed to stay connected to her, and like my whole journey of my young like adolescence and young adulthood was I'm just going to get to mom. Like after college, I moved to the same city that she's from, and
Mm.
had no plan after that. It's like I had like the launching in reverse, you know what I mean? So
Yes.
so all that is to say that, and I know I'm sharing a lot, and it feels risky to do so, and also courageous. Um, that by the time the pandemic came along, I wasn't feeling connected to my mother. I was feeling emotionally distant from her, and it was very deep source of pain. And I
Mm.
didn't know if we were going to really reconcile in the way that I wanted to. And I had a dream uh, that it was like a week or two after school had started again. Maybe it was a month. It's like April or May of
Mm.
25 years ago. And I had this dream. And in the dream, my mother said to me, well, now that I've been helping with Clementine, my daughter's schoolwork, because that's true, she was starting to offer to help. I wonder if you and I could have coffee together, which was just what I had been yearning for. But I thought, well, I don't want to impose on her, and maybe that's she just isn't, she can't meet me there. And I decided to call her up that next day and to let her know I really wanted to reconnect and see if we could heal.
Mm.
And she said, and I said, Mom, I had a dream. And she said, oh my goodness, tell me. And I told her, and she said, that was me. I was talking to you. I have a letter I just wrote you. I was going to put in the mail today. Can I read it to you? And I said, sure, hold on, I need to get tissues. And I got some tissues, and I got this heart from my dear friend Simona, and I held it so that as I could begin this transformative healing work with my own mother, which led to multiple years of mother-daughter family therapy with a very gifted therapist. My mother and I are as close as we've ever been, ever. It's such a joy of my life. And this symbol was such a sense of I'm not alone as I'm venturing into this new emotional and relational space.
Mhm.
It was just the coolest. And these are tears of joy, you know, of the transformation that has happened.
Mm.
Yeah,
While you
that
were speaking and holding the heart, I had an image of tears filling up the absorbency of the
oh
heart. It's
yeah,
such a cushion for um
yeah,
a, oh,
yeah. Thank you for letting me share that because it's and that bridge again between the personal and the professional. None of my clients
yes.
know that I've been in family therapy with my mother. And yet me doing that work and
Yes.
tapping into the deep grief of that loss from when I was so young and the yearning and being able to speak for that and have it be witnessed in a safe place with
Yeah.
my mother and the therapist, it absolutely makes me a better therapist
Yes.
because I can hold those deep spaces. You know, when a client comes and says, I don't want to go there because I'm afraid if I start crying, I'm never going to stop.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a younger therapist, I was like, oh shit, that's really scary. I don't know how I don't know how to help you with that. Like, and now I can say, I'm here with you. I'm here. We can be there together. You know, and it's an uncertain place that, you know, moving into those raw emotions and revisiting those painful times so that they can come up and be transmuted and transformed and
Yeah.
become a companion, you know?
I so appreciate the authenticity presenting and sharing with us how important vulnerability is to being honest, to
Yes.
being truthfully reflective, and holding those moments up and sharing them as you just did. I feel so much gratitude for honoring the integrity of who you were and who your mother was, and how you came to build that connection after so many years. and
Yes.
it's like you're saying, it's never too late.
Right. Yeah.
And you bringing in your daughter as a part of a bridge there, that the practicality of
Yes.
COVID and learning,
Yes.
and then how that you're like the three of you,
Yes.
grandmother, mother, daughter, were a part of that. And then Simone, just a part of that heartfelt authenticity and connection.
That's right.
It's beautiful, Hetty, your experience and
Yeah.
your sharing.
Yep. That's right. And I love what you just said. I just want to repeat it because I hadn't really thought about it this way. The practical circumstances of my daughter needing help with Zoom and my mother being a teacher, being wanting to help her. That was the portal, that was the entree, that was the bridge
Yeah.
to this, the beginning of a fundamental healing for she and me, you know. It was just a practical situation. And
Right.
it seeped into my unconsciousness such that I had that dream, you know.
And then your mother writing the letter.
Yes.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
much power in the psychological coincidence, as it were, that deep archetypal or existential depth of the mother-daughter connection, the
That's right.
mother-daughter connection that
Yeah.
was that was dammed up and
Yes.
then evened out and then flowed. And I can only imagine that your daughter has benefited with this evolving connection
Yeah.
to your birth mother.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
I would agree with you. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there are wisdoms uh, that have come up, but before we go to wisdoms and in a critique,
Mm.
the power of the symbols that you've already shared are wonderful. Is there another symbol that you want to share with us?
Sure.
And you're okay with time?
Yeah, I'm okay with time.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. You don't mind.
Um, it's so hard to decide, Dee. So my dragon wants to say hi. Even I was gonna choose this other symbol, but maybe it's so
Oh,
there's
wow.
I'll just do that.
Yeah.
So dragons have shown up in my sand trays for the 11 years that I've come to your wonderful place. They just keep showing up. They just show up all the time. And it's not like I said, I know dragon is like my totem or something. They just showed up. And then this I just acquired at a maker's market over Christmas. And I thought it was like a creche, like a nativity scene.
Oh,
However, I mean, I think that's what it was intentionally meant to be. And for me, it's very much about birthing, right? You've got
oh,
the holding space and the grandmother and the mother and the baby. It's
holy
just,
cow.
it's amazing. And the
Oh, yes.
dragon is very curious. His blue eyes are sort of like recognizing the blue of this three generational energy. And it's also the practical, like the birthing is very practical. And then the universal and the archetypal of the whole.
Divine.
Yes,
There's
divine.
the divine, the
Yes,
goddess, and the
yes.
uh, just the holding that seems to be going on there.
Yeah. The divine and the sacred and the profane, you know,
Yes,
right here.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And
Yeah.
then does fire breathing dragon resonate with this one here, or is this a non-fire?
Oh no, no, he could breathe fire if he wants
He's
to.
got fire.
Oh,
Mhm.
sure. Yeah. But not like a mean fire.
No.
He's it's more like a fire of creativity and a fire of aliveness.
Woo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Transformation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So transformative.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
And it's a he. It's a
he's a
he.
he. He happens to
Does,
be a he.
does
Yeah.
he have a name?
No, he doesn't. I mean, I have never asked him.
Oh,
So
we'll definitely ask
I'm
him
gonna ask
sometime.
him. He's like, yeah, you should have asked me. Yeah. We'll have a conversation. I'll talk about it with him. Yeah.
So, Hetty, sometimes I ask participants to hold up both symbols,
Uh-huh.
and you have more than two. Um,
Right.
and
Oh,
uh,
yes.
and I'll just ask you something like, do they know each other?
Mhm.
Do these all know each other?
Well, let's see. They recognize each other. So, the hearth, the creativity, the life force that's in here. This one's like, oh yeah, like I recognize that. That seems familiar. And
The
then
heart, the statue, if you the bottom piece, if you turned it upside down, looks like the heart. Face the mirror or face your. You see the bottom of the
yeah,
crash, or it, and how
yeah,
it
it
comes
does.
down to a point,
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
almost like the shape of the heart.
Yeah, yeah,
And now I see the back of your figure. Oh
yeah.
my
It's
goodness.
not fun. The
Oh
pop
my.
had a good time with this. Yeah, all
Almost
the
like turtle.
yes, very
The
much like turtle. Very much
oh
like turtle. Oh, this goes.
wow. The great turtle
Yeah,
that
right,
goes through the universe and holds Mother Earth. I mean, this,
right.
and then you have the mother and the grandmother and the daughter, and then the heart of connection, and
Yeah.
also the swirl, that labyrinth-like movement in the heart, but it also feels very much in your
hmm
statue.
hmm Yes, they like each other. They've decided they're friends. Yeah.
What does the dragon uh, feel about those two?
Oh, he's good with them. Yeah. Let's see. It's hard to hold all three at once, but I'll just do this. Um, they have some shared timeless wisdom. Yeah.
Mhm.
They know things that go way beyond my conscious,
Yes.
understanding of things, you know? Yeah.
Oh,
It's
I can only imagine listening into the conversations that could happen. And then all the heart and the dragon and this the trilogy of the divine and the feminine in that
yeah.
birthing water-like uh, form.
Yeah,
And
that is lots of water form there too. Yeah, and totally about birthing. Yeah. Sensual,
mhm.
sexual, generative, you know, holding.
Reminds me of baby turtles rushing across to survive, rushing across the sands
Oh yeah.
into the ocean.
Mm.
And if I may, the connection with you in your in rushing across the sands of time to reconnect with mother.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah.
Uh, we definitely have to have another conversation. Um, I'd like to touch, before you leave, I'd like to touch on wisdoms that,
Mm.
because we haven't really touched on supervision, and that would be perfect for another discussion, and how you built your practice and how you supervise and train clinicians and what you've learned there. So that sounds like a whole nother
Sure.
time together. Uh, there are two questions that I like to explore, to wonder about, is if you could change anything in the clinical training system at large,
Mm.
be it graduate or internships or actual therapists or licensure,
Yeah.
but also balancing that scale with what wisdoms you want to speak directly to the viewers, and from your own heart, from your own lived experience.
Mm.
So you can take either one, maybe take critical assessment, like what you, from your
Mhm.
wisdoms of what you might like to see transformed,
Yeah. It's about the whole person of the therapist being welcomed in the training spaces and in professional spaces, and having an expectation that clinicians and growing, emerging clinicians can be real with uh, with their colleagues. So I've heard more than once from the clinicians who work with me, oh, this is the first working environment I've ever been in where I'm not only just allowed, but invited to bring my whole self. I don't have to be sanitized. I don't have to just only talk about the things that are going well with my clients. I can bring my doubts. I can bring my struggles.
Yeah.
That just feels so important, because
Whew.
what is it going to happen? You know, everybody has busy lives. Maybe if we're lucky, we're all doing an hour of therapy a week. You know, not everybody does that or can do that, but even that is not enough
Right.
to be able to hold the space
Hmm.
that we need to grow and transform and find the wisdom, you know?
Yes.
So I think it'd be cool if in graduate trainings, there is some version of something like clinical pastoral education, which is basically the clinical is, you know, you're right there with people, you're understanding the realities of people's lives. And the pastoral is about presence, you know, it's like
Mhm.
how to be present with yourself so that you can be present with other people. That
Yes.
is what I would like in an in vivo kind of a way, you know.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's what I hope to be able to create and envision is a space where people can, in real life, you know, as an intern, as a provisionally licensed therapist getting trained, and
Mhm.
even as it never stops, right? The growing
No.
to in vivo be able to notice as I'm with my clients, this is what I notice in myself. You know, not just about transference, countertransference. That's an old term and
Sure.
it has value, but about how am I, what does it mean to be, you know, with all the thoughts and feelings and beliefs, all those layers
Yes.
that are there of meaning making
Hmm.
relationship. That's what I would like more of in the training and in our profession. And that's what I strive to co-create in.
There's a piece about self-care in there that as you first began to speak
Mm,
about that, and I'm reminded of how you began our interview with you brought us into the waters. We brought your sense of the joy
yeah,
and peace, uh,
yeah,
that there you are floating in the water and then welcoming the inner child at 6, uh, and
yes.
and 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 we can invite viewers to be mindful to bring in whatever their ocean is, to
Mm-hmm.
bring in more self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Very difficult, surely, but it's so vital to
Oh,
balance.
yeah, yeah. We're humans first, and so we're living lives. We're walking this journey. We're all walking each other home, right? And
Yes.
and so we're here. The personal is always in the professional in our work. I do not believe you can leave the personal at home and just go punch a clock and
Yeah.
do this work. You
No.
can't. It's being able to, each of us finding the ways that we feed our souls, the ways that we are able to let go of stress, you know, and be able to allow the pain of our clients to flow through us, but not get stuck in us.
Yes.
That,
Oh,
yeah.
oh. This really does bring us right to the wisdoms that you would like to speak to the viewers. Like it may have been something we didn't touch on, but it may have emerged just now from our conversation. What do you most want to say directly to a viewer?
Mm. It's funny because there's a part of me that's saying, be careful because, you know, 10 years from now, you might be even more able to answer this question. So, you know, just I guess that maybe it's something about that, remembering the journey, like it's never ending. We're not supposed to necessarily arrive. And I'm speaking to myself as much as anyone else, you know,
Yes. Yeah.
that maintaining that openness and humility and curiosity
Mhm.
of what does it mean to be alive, you know,
Yes.
and how do we live with each other, right, in ways that are
Mhm.
life-giving, and to maintain that openness, I think it's kind of a big ask in the rigors and the challenges of daily life. You know, when people are working and they have families, and a lot of people are parenting or they're caring for elderly parents, and
Yeah.
the world is very stressful, and more so even now than it has been, you know, and it's a lot to say, oh, so like maintain perspective all the time, you know.
Mm,
That's, however, it's a practice. It's a
yeah.
practice. I love thinking about
Yes.
practice practice is something that you don't perfect. A practice is that you keep working on over and over time, you know. So the practice of perspective, the practice of remembering our humanity, you know, our shared journey, the
Yes.
partnership, the connection and community
Yeah.
that we can have, and that taking care of ourselves as human beings is an important part of that. Yeah, it's, and that can look in so many different ways, right? It can everything from the practicality of getting enough sleep, you know, and exercising when we can, to having nurturing relationships in our life, you know, and having spaces for creativity, you know. That's something that I still work on. I'd like to be doing more writing, and I haven't quite found the space to do it. I'm
Mm.
being creative in other ways, parenting and growing a practice, you know. And there's some creativity I'd like to do more of, just for the joy of being creative, you know. So that's, I'm aware of that. Mhm.
Hetty Barnett, it is an incredible pleasure and honor to be spending this time with you and your shared experience developmentally as well as with your clients. And I wish for you then more of that time in the ocean and more of that time with the power and the fire from your dragon within, the creative fire.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for the meaningful shared experience that we've just had with you.
Thank you.
And and to you all, I wish you to find the oceans that nourish you. And as Hetty says, to continue the practice that we never arrive. We have moments, touchstones in time that are meaningful and that we embrace. And so welcoming the mundane and the transformative and continue the practice. Take very good care. And I look forward to seeing you in my next interview.